breaking down into nutrients that can come back into the bloodstream by the end of the small intestine. Historically, foods have come with tools to open them, called enzymes. An enzyme is a lot like what we think of in a, imagine a receiving dock of cargo. Some of them are in trunks where we have keys to unlock them. Some of them are in boxes where we have to use a crowbar and a hammer to open them up. And enzymes and what's inside of those cargo is what we really want. What's inside of these foods, the amino acids, the free fatty acids, the fuel, the vitamins, the minerals are what we want. And we have to be able to completely unpackage this cargo into nutrients that are invisible to the eyes, micronutrients, by the time we get to the end of that small intestine. If we don't, we have undigested food which decomposes in the body, producing unwanted inflammation and byproducts. We typically only have 6 hours to break things down. Historically, these foods have come with crowbars and tools and keys for the locks. And that 6 hours is enough time with our own enzymes, our own body's given tools, and the tools of the foods to completely process what's inside of our foods and absorb them and leave for that last upside down horseshoe, the large intestine, just recollecting water, since we haven't always had rain, there's been droughts, the body wants to preserve water, and grab minerals which are usable and valuable for us. We've talked in other Fresh Start series. The FDA defines pasteurization in milk by the absence of enzymes. Milk comes with over 20 enzymes that are tools that naturally occur in the milk that help us to process it. A study just 3 weeks ago found that 60% of people tested in America cannot adequately digest dairy. It's required at every school lunch program that 6 out of 10 kids are being stressed and potentially harmed by that practice. If we were talking about raw milk, we would find it, I think, much less than 60%. Pasteurized juices. This is pasteurized. FDA sees that there's no enzymes. They see that it's got a pH of under 4, preferably 3.5, so you'll often find citric acid in healthy organic ones. Or you'll find other preservatives and other additives to get the pH low. When it's acidic enough, when it's acid, bacteria can't grow. So they want to keep anything from growing in here. Very little stuff grows in white flour. Why? Because even moths and microbes don't get enough nutrients to reproduce out of highly processed foods. So it's high acid, it's been killed, it's got sugars, it's got minerals, but it's got very little else. Some vitamins can survive pasteurization. We cook all of our foods, or we cook most of them, but really what we have depended on from our diet is harmed by the cooking process. And every one of these things is going to be a raw food. It's going to be filled with enzymes. It's going to have liberated the enzymes by breaking the cell walls so they're into the mixture, so that we digest them with very little effort. What happens when somebody does a job for you that you need to do yourself? You got more time to do other stuff. You've got energy. Mm-hmm. What takes away from having enough energy to digest foods in 6 hours? Stress. If we're under high stress, we don't put enough blood into the digestive system to deal with foods. Stress is a natural survival physiology for humans. We release adrenaline, norepinephrine, oxytocin in women, and it allows us to live another day. But how do we get that extra energy? How do you get extra money to pay for your car payment? Well, maybe you take out of the food budget. So we take the energy from the digestive system and the organs in the skin, and we put it into the muscles and brain, and we can live another day, but we have wasted digesting that meal as we're under high stress. The influence of antibiotics, pesticides, mercury in the mouth are going to impair the digestive system as well. Eating foods that are highly cooked on a constant basis or highly processed. A preservative preserves the food on the shelf, but most of those preservatives are often grabbing the hammer away from the opening up of the container, and they decrease the ability to get the nutrients out of our foods as well. So a couple more little salient points of the general theme of why smoothies and juices are so good for you. One of which is, studies have shown that when we eat highly cooked foods, those burned foods are recognized by our immune system as invaders. So when we eat too much fried, highly cooked foods, we live in an inflamed, high white blood cell state. And that is leading to other problems. So inflammation is something that we avoid with raw foods. And I've seen this be a powerful therapeutic tool for people. Studies done 80 years ago showed that when you eat a raw starch, there's very little increase in blood sugar. But if you cook that potato, we've broken down the steady state absorption, and we get a very high rise of blood sugar and then a lowering, and we have to involve not only the pancreas for the sugar, but the liver for the conversion, the adrenals for the reduction of the insulin. We do a lot of work with cooked foods. There's a new movie that comes out, and someone's saying, "What's soul food?" Soul food, and they said, "Well, it's the formula for black men to have cancer and obesity." Something of that nature. You know, we can tolerate things. We can tolerate a vexatious person for a little while, but we don't want to live with someone who's always complaining. We'd much rather have better surrounding. We can tolerate some of our abuses, and the better we ate last year, the more we can abuse ourselves this year. But that doesn't mean that abuse is good for you. It just means that if we've exercised and eaten well, it'll take a little longer before we pay the consequences of doing the wrong things. But these are the sorts of things that can begin reversing disease, because the body is the best doctor and has all the tools to recreate optimal health. So my wife Susan is going to come up to the turbo blender as we make our first green smoothie. We're going to go ahead and use an unpeeled cucumber for it. It's going to make it a little bit more bitter. But the skins have some good nutrients. Susan will take the seeds out of the smoothies when we do them at home, and I'm going to ask her to just go ahead and use the whole fruit today. Some of these things you can cut up well in advance, but things like apples, it's not going to be harmful, but they will brown fairly quickly, and that isn't aging, that's an oxidizing. The more alive something is, the more quickly you notice that it passes on. Barbara, you have a question?
What is the reason you take the seeds out? Why do I take the seeds out? I don't know. I don't have a good reason. I think that because I've typically used a blender for the green smoothies, that the seeds tend to still have a texture. But with this blender, the blades go so fast and all of that